Adding one more star to our flag might seem like a gesture from the past, but this particular star weighs more than all the others combined on the scale of the future. Greenland, becoming the 51st state, would not be another line item in a history book. It would be the moment everything changed. The story begins in 1867, when Secretary of State William Seward stood before Congress and demanded approval to purchase Alaska from Russia. They called it madness, Seward's folly, a frozen wasteland that would drain the treasury for generations. History proved them catastrophically wrong, but what fewer people remember is that Seward's vision did not end at the Bering Strait. He understood geography the way a chess master understands the board, seeing moves decades ahead. Just 2 years later, in 1869, Seward quietly proposed that the United States acquire Greenland from Denmark. The proposal died in committee meetings, forgotten in the chaos of Reconstruction, dismissed as the fantasy of a man who had already spent too much on ice. But the idea never truly disappeared. It hibernated in the minds of strategists who studied maps late into the night, who traced shipping routes that did not yet exist, who imagined a world where the ice would retreat and reveal what had been hidden for millennia. In 1946, President Harry Truman revived the vision and offered Denmark $100 million in gold for the island. The Danes refused, politely but firmly, understanding what they possessed, even if the world did not yet grasp its full magnitude. Greenland is not simply large in the way that Texas or Montana are large. It is vast on a scale that defies comprehension. At 836,000 square miles, it dwarfs Alaska and makes the lower 48 states seem almost crowded by comparison. Imagine combining Texas, California, Montana, and New Mexico into a single territory, then covering nearly all of it with ice up to 2 miles thick. That ice sheet holds roughly 10% of all the fresh water on Earth, enough to raise global sea levels by more than 20 feet if it ever melted completely. Yet beneath that frozen armor lies something that makes the California gold rush look like children searching for coins in a fountain. The geological surveys tell a story that scientists whisper about in conferences but rarely shout from headlines. Conservative estimates suggest that Greenland holds the world's largest untapped deposits of rare earth elements outside of China. These are not curiosities for collectors. They are the lifeblood of modern civilization, the atoms that make every smartphone work, every electric vehicle run, every wind turbine spin, every precision-guided missile find its target. Picture massive drills the size of buildings boring through permafrost that has not seen sunlight since before the pyramids were built. The grinding roar of equipment tears away layers of frozen earth to expose veins of neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, metals worth more per ounce than gold. China currently controls roughly 90% of the global rare earth supply and has weaponized this monopoly repeatedly, threatening to cut off exports whenever diplomatic tensions rise. Greenland, as an American state, would shatter that stranglehold overnight. The United States would control its own technological destiny for the first time in half a century. But the treasure extends far deeper. Beneath the northeastern coast, seismic surveys have identified oil and natural gas reserves that dwarf the North Sea fields. The United States Geological Survey estimated that Greenland's offshore basins could contain more than 50 billion barrels of oil and gas. For perspective, the entire proven reserves of the United States currently stand at around 40 billion barrels. This is not supplemental energy to get us through a rough winter. This is a complete transformation of American energy independence, secured by conventional reserves that could supply the nation for 2 centuries or more. And there is uranium. Massive deposits are scattered across the southern tip of the island, locked in ancient rock formations, barely explored because ice and remoteness have kept them pristine and untouched. In an age where nuclear energy is returning as the only viable path to carbon-neutral baseload power, Controlling uranium deposits of this scale would position America as the arbiter of global energy transition. Nations that want to escape coal dependency would have to negotiate with Washington. The economic argument is overwhelming, but it is almost beside the point when measured against the strategic reality. Look at a map from above the North Pole, the way military strategists do when they plan for wars that have not yet begun. Greenland sits at the center of everything. 600 miles from Canada, 800 miles from Iceland, and less than 1,500 miles from Norway and Russia. Every ship traveling between Europe and North America through northern routes, every aircraft flying the Great Circle Path between continents, every submarine prowling beneath Arctic ice passes within range of Greenland's territory. This is not theoretical. This is the geometry of power in the 21st century. The United States currently operates Thule Air Base in northwestern Greenland under a treaty with Denmark dating back to 1951. This base houses the northernmost deep-water port, accessible year-round, and serves as an early warning station for ballistic missiles launched over the pole. It is critical infrastructure that defense planners lose sleep over because it is provisional, subject to the diplomatic goodwill of a European nation whose interests do not always align with American priorities. Denmark can revoke access. It can impose conditions. It can invite other powers to participate. Statehood changes everything in ways that cannot be overstated. An American state cannot have its access revoked by foreign governments. Greenland, as the 51st state, would mean the Navy could establish permanent Arctic bases at Nuuk without asking permission from Copenhagen. The Coast Guard could patrol passages opening for the first time in recorded human history. The Arctic is melting, and this is not a political statement, but a measured fact of physical science. Within 30 years, the Arctic Ocean will be ice-free for several months each summer. Shipping companies are already planning routes that will cut transit times between Shanghai and Rotterdam by 40% compared to the Suez Canal. Energy companies are designing drilling platforms for waters previously locked under permanent ice. Commercial fishing fleets are pushing north as traditional stocks migrate toward cooler waters. Every nation with Arctic coastline is scrambling to claim territory and influence before the rules become fixed and the opportunities are divided. Russia has planted flags on the seafloor beneath the North Pole, claiming an extended continental shelf that would give Moscow sovereignty over vast underwater territories. China has declared itself a near-Arctic state despite being thousands of miles south of the Arctic Circle, and has invested billions in icebreaker fleets and research stations. These competitions are happening now, in real time, while the United States operates through borrowed arrangements and temporary permissions that could be revoked at any diplomatic inconvenience. Under international law, a nation's exclusive economic zone extends 200 nautical miles from its coastline. Greenland has the longest Arctic coastline of any territory on Earth. The United States would not be requesting access. It would be granting access on conditions written in Washington. This would fracture alliances. Denmark would feel betrayed. The European Union would view this as American unilateralism at its most aggressive. There would be emergency summits, angry speeches, possibly sanctions. But Europe would adjust as it always does. European security depends on American military guarantees that no amount of diplomatic outrage can replace. Brussels can protest but cannot rupture the Atlantic Alliance over Greenland. Russia and China present more dangerous calculations. For Moscow, American control would mean forces within striking distance of the Kola Peninsula, home to Russia's Northern Fleet and its nuclear submarine bases. The Kremlin would scream about encirclement, but has neither economic leverage nor military capacity to prevent it. China would respond with calculated fury. Beijing has positioned itself as protector of international law. Yet, American acquisition would expose that rhetoric while inviting uncomfortable questions about Tibet, Hong Kong, and the South China Sea. Expect accelerated Chinese investment in Russian Arctic routes and hardening competition across every domain. Climate change is not waiting. The ice retreats on a schedule set by physics, not politics. In 10 years, the strategic picture will be locked in place by infrastructure already built, by routes already established. America can shape that future or react to it. The cost would be staggering. Denmark would demand hundreds of billions, possibly approaching $500 billion. Greenland's 57,000 residents would need integration, with their culture protected, economic development subsidized, and infrastructure built from scratch across terrain that fights every construction effort. But measure that cost against spending the next century negotiating access agreements, watching China lock up rare earth supplies, paying tribute for bases we should own outright. Some will call this imperialism. Greenland has a distinct culture, an indigenous Inuit population that has occupied this land for thousands of years. They deserve a voice in their future. But Greenland's current status as an autonomous territory of Denmark is itself a remnant of European empire that survived decolonization by changing its name rather than its nature. Greenlanders already live under a distant capital that makes decisions without their full participation. The question is not whether a larger power will govern, but which power and under what terms. American statehood would offer what Denmark never has: 2 senators with equal standing, at least 1 House member, electoral votes in presidential elections, federal funding dwarfing anything Copenhagen has provided. Greenland's residents would go from subjects of a monarchy to citizens of a republic with constitutional rights and protections that have been tested and defended for nearly 250 years. They would vote on their future and shape American policy rather than watching from outside. The day Greenland becomes a state, the American flag will fly over ice fields that stretch beyond the horizon. Children will learn a geography where their country extends from Key West to the polar darkness of Qaanaaq. America would no longer merely touch the Arctic. It would be an Arctic civilization responsible for a frontier as challenging and full of promise as the West ever was. The post-war order is ending. The question is whether America will shape what comes next or be shaped by it. Greenland represents that choice made visible. Do we reach for the frontier as we have always done, or do we accept inherited borders and hope for the best? The ice is melting now. The competition is happening now. The decisions are being made now in rooms we will never see by people whose names we will never know. But the choice belongs to all of us, to every citizen who believes that America's greatest chapter has not yet been written. The question is not whether Greenland will change the world. It is whether we will be the ones holding the map when it does.